Welcome back to The Narrative. I am your storyteller, Callistra Faria. Joining me now on The Narrative is Dr. Shane Mohammed. He's a political analyst and he's based in Trinidad and Tobago. We're taking a look at Kamla Prasad Bises's leadership of Trinidad and Tobago, her second go around as Prime Minister of that country. And it's been just about a month since she was elected. UNC unseated the people, the PNM in Trinidad and Tobago. She's now the Prime Minister for a second time. And welcome to the program, Dr. Mohammed. How are you?
Very well. Thank you so very much to have me for having me. It's been a while.
It's been a while. It's been a while. I wasn't sure if I should have you on or not, because I didn't know if you would want to talk to me about oil and whether or not you can send
I want to talk
you
about
can send your
oil.
cousin or your brother to see whether or not we have oil or something like that. So I wasn't sure, but here we are.
We can explore. We can explore. We can explore it. We can explore it.
So, Kamla Prasad Bisesa back in the driver's seat in Trinidad and Tobago, an interesting figure, if you like. As you look at a month has gone since she's been prime minister, what would you say are the defining characteristics of her leadership style in these early days as prime minister, including the oil thing?
Well, she's behaving a little bit like she's behaving a lot like Margaret Thatcher. I think in the 10 years that she's been opposition leader, um, she's read the biography of Margaret Thatcher, the grocer's daughter, and she's been applying it to her own leadership and her second go around, as you say, as prime minister. And I think it's something that's very necessary because, in the first 5 years, getting her feet wet, understanding the dynamics, saying the right and wrong things, um, you know, not forgiving and being too forgiving as well, kind of caused her to lose power. In fact, a conversation I was having with some students a couple of days ago, some of them believe that, and I still believe it up to this day, that there was too much that was done in the 5 years that she was prime minister, notwithstanding you take everything as a whole, um, the good outweighed the bad, even though the bad was what was used as the weapon to unseat her government. But she should never have lost that 2015 general election. Um, I believe that then, and I believe it now. And I think 10 years looking on into the opposition, the PNM, no, the PNM's governance in the last 10 years makes me think, where exactly did things go wrong in Trinidad and Tobago? So, for example, yes, we know we have an oil deficit, but we don't have a gas deficit. We have expertise in oil and gas, we have expertise in the energy sector, we have human resource capital that's very much readily available in Trinidad and Tobago that has been existing for quite some time. And now that I'm looking on and listening to the new Prime Minister in this dispensation, it's making me wonder, did the former government squander money in ways that didn't really meet the goals and objectives and the dreams and aspirations of the people? And therefore, I think in this first 30 days as prime minister, what she's done is hitting the ground again, so not top down, but bottom up approach, and dealing with the issues that touch and concern infrastructure, flooding, the basic things that we call basic amenities in political science. She's dealing with that, and then she's climbing the governance level, dealing with things like crime, how she's going to set the crime agenda, the legislative agenda. She's taken a different approach to governance. So ministers are no longer operating in silos, but they're operating in clusters, which, in my opinion, it makes a minister more accountable and more transparent because
Does that model make corruption a little bit harder? Because if you have a cluster of ministers operating, it would have to be some serious meeting of the minds and collusion um, for corruption to flourish. Otherwise, you're on your own and you can set things up. Is that one of the reasons why? Because I know that in her last term, there were a lot of issues. Is that a response to some of those issues that they were plagued with in the last term?
Oh, definitely, for sure. Not only does that prevent or it stymies any elements of corruption, we have to take into consideration the procurement regulations also is a major block to how we do business with the government, how private citizens, how companies do, how consultants do business with the government. And therefore, yes, there is greater accountability and transparency with the how you conduct the business of the people. It is also a collaborative cyclical approach to doing business and to delivering goods and services to the people. So therefore, yes, greater accountability, definitely greater transparency. And if you look at the breakdown of ministers, and how ministries are clustered, there are at least six ministers operating within a cluster. One is a senior minister, one is a junior minister, and it allows for cohesion, it allows for collaboration. No man is an island, and therefore, you know, it has greater opportunity to deliver to the people, communicate to the people, but also communicate with each other as colleagues, but also present to the prime minister as the CEO, and give a detailed explanation as to what, when, who, what, and why.
How has Trinidad and Tobago reacted on a whole to this new leadership? I mean, yes, people voted, but you don't know what's going to happen until the votes are counted and the government is installed. Now that she's been there for 30 days, 31 days, um, public response.
Conextra, the thing about it is, without sounding biased, people are asking questions on social media. You walk around and you listen to people talk, and the strange thing is that Trinidad seems to have gotten, and Tobago has gotten lighter. There's a The population has taken an approach where we will wait, because 10 years is a long time. 10 years of the same thing that didn't get better but got worse is also very difficult and frustrating for people. And then here comes an undercurrent, because that is an undercurrent that just swept the government out of office and installed a new government. I mean, she's made history by being the first prime minister within recent times to win an election with two constitutional majorities. And as I said yesterday, I'll say now, I expect that that constitutional majority will be used to the benefit and progress and development and modification of certain legislative frameworks and structures in Trinidad and Tobago, which we've been operating under since as of next year for 50 years. So, there's been a wait and see approach. People are not quick to jump to conclusions. People understand that we live in a multi-level governance system, and therefore you have to win the election, install the prime minister, put together the cabinet, ministers go into office, you open the parliament, you elect the presiding officers. We start getting persons acquainted with what their ministries, the status of their ministries, where we are with regard to money, where we are with regard to projects, what are our assets, what do we have available to us to use in-house before we outsource. And now we're moving into the next stage, which is the appointment of the state boards. She also said that there are some state boards that are operating that are obsolete, and they are just there for the purposes of employing persons within the party structure, and she doesn't want that. So she's going to be assessing state boards, their viability, their productivity, their revenue generation, and where need be, uh, totally disintegrate it or pull them together and create a whole new system. So there's a lot of a wait and see approach. Observe before people, even myself, observe and before we comment in terms of what we say in terms of as it pertains to being critical. Um, we do see, and there is a need to address crime urgently. Um, in the next couple of weeks, we'll be going into a media review. I think that's an eye opener to know how much money we have, what is available to us, how she's actually today, she's supposed to have a post cabinet meeting. She's supposed to either this week or next week address the issue of foreign exchange and where is that money, where is the majority of our forex going and why. And so there's a lot of fact finding. This is a different government because a lot of questions are unanswered, even to the people of Trinidad and Tobago.
Any notable policy changes in these first 30 days?
we're going into the Attorney General has made it very clear that he is going to be bringing stand your ground laws to the Parliament soon. That's one. Um, she is on a trajectory to determine where we go with regard to how we make money in terms of foreign exchange. She is on a trajectory right now as it pertains to how we use how we make what the approach is as it pertains to the refinery and the energy sector. I know you talk about us coming to Grenada to get the oil, um, but it's about utilizing human capital, which is one of our greatest strengths in Trinidad and Tobago, to not just the benefit of Trinidad and Tobago, but to the benefit of those who are seeking to also expand their economic opportunities. Um, we are what is the next what is so far those are the top oh definitely everybody's on the ground because we were in the we were approaching the rainy season when she got into office. Man, there has been a holistic all of government approach to ensuring that as best as possible we deal with the issue of alleviating flooding. And you would be surprised that alleviation of flooding comes down to something like cleaning a drain, cleaning the water courses, removing debris.
I find that in Grenada that is the same issue. A lot of flooding just has to do with some public works not working.
Yes, yes, it's a simple thing like taking a equipment and going and taking out all of this grass that has and the silting of a river or a water course. You know, there's so much pollution. We need to definitely move towards eradicating and reducing the concept of pollution. And therefore, one of the things we're going to have to look at is how we move. And in this, especially now, this administration will have to determine our short, medium, and long term approach to recycling, what we do with recycled products, because the economy and the sectors are very much open to foreign direct investment. And I think that's the way we should go. Look at foreign direct investment opportunities to deal with issues such as recycling. I mean, the government shouldn't be involved in every single thing. And therefore, there should be a balance. There are certain things that government should stay out of, and there are certain things we should encourage people to come into the country and invest in. And I think one of it is recycling. Why
Mm.
should the government be investing in recycling when we have private sector and international private sector organizations that want to do business with Trinidad and Tobago? So, in other words, the Prime Minister is saying Trinidad and Tobago is open for business again, and she's going to do what is necessary to ensure the ease of doing business, which is a critical issue that has prevented people from moving away from Trinidad and Tobago and going to other islands like Barbados and whatnot, you know.
Which leads me to ask you here, how has the business community responded to the change in administration? Is there a new, signs of renewed confidence and so on? Or is there any concern coming from the business sector? I know that your
Well,
foreign exchange issue has been a big
yeah.
problem, both for retail consumers as well as the business community in Trinidad and Tobago. How are they reacting to the new administration?
Well, here's the challenge. Here's the challenge, right? Prior to the election, during the campaign, the then opposition leader, now prime minister, she made some serious she threw her guns on the energy chamber, and she was saying that the energy chamber became a closed circuit, one for the big boys kind of approach, and therefore she wanted the energy sectors like the energy chamber, the chamber of commerce, to not be hierarchical, to not be elite. That's the word I would use. She didn't want it to become an elite club, and that is exactly what it had become. It's the who's were invited to all of the functions and all of the different events, and it was only for a segment of the society. And therefore, what she's on a trajectory of doing is you have to break down barriers where there are walls that are preventing people from interaction and interfacing. She's breaking it down. I note that the Minister of Energy met with three major energy companies. So Trinidad and Tobago is open to doing business with everybody who wants to do business with Trinidad and Tobago. But I think they're cautious because she's not going to just sit back and say, okay, fine. She's going to ask hard questions, and they're going to have to present long-term sustainable plans as to how they are contributing to the development of Trinidad and Tobago. Because I think what is happening, the elitism that existed for all these years didn't do us any benefits in the long term. When you ask the question, well, how much revenue generation did the energy chamber bring to Trinidad and Tobago in the last 10 years? Can they answer that question? How much revenue generation did the collective chamber of commerce bring to Trinidad and Tobago? Somebody has to account. And where did that money go? And in whose pockets, right? So, you know, it's really about breaking down barriers, having discussions. The Minister of Trade, Investment and Tourism, who is the founder of Sasha Cosmetics, I mean, a global brand in Trinidad and Tobago that emanated from Trinidad and Tobago. He's been charged with trade and investment. And one of the things that he's very much interested in is where is the foreign exchange going? Who is controlling it and why? And she is going to, this time around, she's on a, what I would call, she's on a legacy uh, journey, all about ensuring that all of what was gathered between the 2010 to 2015 reputation that, I mean, when you listen to the speech on the inauguration day, all of what was said about her leadership, the weaknesses of her leadership, the ills of her leadership, she's about eradicating all of that and creating one that for the next 5 years, um, it is ingrained into a systemic kind of way in Trinidad and Tobago. Because, and I asked the question, what does the then during in January and in the lead up to the election, I asked the question, what does the opposition leader, what does Mrs. Prasad Bitesa want her legacy to be? And I will not be, I think we are going into a CARICOM setting where we won't have one female prime minister or one female head of government. We're looking at a possibility of three. So
Three.
first we have
Suriname.
Barbados, second Trinidad and Tobago, now Suriname. So she now has to compare herself, and she's going to be in a period where she's now going to be compared to three two other female leaders in the region. And what does she want that legacy to be? Um, Now that she has two other female colleagues at the level and at the helm of leading a government, and Suriname is on the cusp of an oil boom. Uh, Mia Motley is building a legacy that is probably going to surpass Eugenia Charles. And now we have the question is, where does Mrs. Prasad Bisesa want to position herself in the history books of not just Trinidad and Tobago, but of the region?
Of the region. Where? What's left? What niche does she have to to be remembered, to be
Well, I
noticed?
think, you know, one of the things, if she's a student of Bastille Pandey, she's a student of A&R Robinson. And one of the and she would have understood Mr. Manning. And in 1996 and 1997 at an OAS meeting separately, um, or 95 and 96, I think it was 95 and 96 separately, um, Mr. Manning and Mr. Pandey were both asked a question: how did they do it? And Mr. Pandey's answer was knowing how to take a little and do a lot. And I think one of the things that I think what I believe Mrs. Prasad Bisasa has at her, literally at her fingertips, is constitutional reform. What she does with regard to our relationship with Tobago, how does she strengthen that relationship with Tobago? At the top of of the agenda is the autonomy for Tobago, which I believe is the way to go. Giving Tobago strengthened uh, legislative frameworks, as well as semi-autonomous and autonomous um, frameworks by which they can chart a way forward for themselves. Because Tobago can be a major contributor to the national economy, not just as an addendum to Trinidad, but also as an entity upon itself. So, very much like I would support Trinidad and Tobago operating very much how St. Kitts and Nevis operates. And so that's one legacy up in that regard. And when I would say, when this happens, I believe Tobago would no longer understand or even be able to emotionally, psychologically understand the concept of what PNM is, because everything that PNM said it could have done for Tobago, it did not do, and therefore it has to do with meeting of the minds. So legacy in terms of legislation, constitutional reform, whatever elements of constitutional reform that may be, building and restructuring our economy and giving us the international and regional gravitas that we once had.
What about crime? I mean, can she make any meaningful inroads? I mean, I heard that she had suggested somewhere. I didn't hear it myself, but I had Peter Wickham on my show, and I think he mentioned that she had talked about putting a gun in every home, very Trumpian, very Trump-like. Um, but besides arming Trinidad and Tobago and turning the entire country into a combat situation, how does she? Because I feel like the crime issue and any administration that can really just put that situation, back even just by 10% would have achieved a lot because the data that we have coming out of Trinidad with crime is so horrible. Can
Well,
she?
you see, crime crime is a socio-economic issue, and we we still, I believe, and assessing the politics, assessing the economics, assessing the behaviors of the former administration. Every single country in the region and globally dealt with COVID 19. And every single country, they recovered economically, sociologically, in some form or fashion from COVID 19. But Trinidad and Tobago didn't. And the question is how or why? And I believe that had to do with the lack of political will. And therefore, yes, she says she wants to allow the system for FUL licenses and for people to access guns to be able to stand their ground and to defend themselves. But there's going to be a process. And what I have a challenge Trinidadians and Tobagonians to do is to do critical analysis. Not everybody who applies for a gun is going to be uh, eligible for a gun. And therefore, while the narrative may be that she's going to put guns in every home, there are certain homes that will not be eligible for guns. We just saw where a businessman got jailed yesterday for 4 years because he had an illegal gun to protect his family, and the judge said that she had an onus to uphold the law. So accessing guns will not be something that we pay 40 and 50 and $60,000 like we did before, which was a system of corruption where money went into the pockets of licensors because they were friends with certain people in high places. So make the application, put your case in front of the committee, and I have suggested a committee that is judicial and legal in expertise, and have the commissioner of police be an ex officio member of that committee that scrutinizes who gets a gun. That's one. I support the death penalty. I believe that we need to agree that we can't conform to not everybody. I mean, crime is, even Jamaica has questioned whether they should go back to the death penalty. If breaking somebody's neck or cutting somebody's tail with the birch or the cat and iron tail or the tambourine whip, as the case may be, which is on the law books, is going to send a clear message that if you do something wrong and you harm people, innocent people, which in my book is also I'd also think that it should be considered treason. Acts of violence against the state includes its people because its people are critical
You
stakeholders,
know,
key
you know, you know,
stakeholders.
you know. I get what you're saying, Dr. Mohammed, but don't the researchers, the experts say that there is no specific and clear link of cause and correlation between the death penalty and any kind of easement in violent crimes and killings. And so just generally the data doesn't support that it acts as a deterrent in any meaningful way.
And then there are those who say that there are, and
That
I
it
think
does.
so I in the way we look at it, I think it's a cultural thing. And
Mm.
if we don't get tough with how we deal with crime, then how do we then send a clear message to those who believe that they can go into the jails and they can benefit off of taxpayers' money. And and therefore that's unfair because you can't tell me you go hurt a family, rape a child, kill somebody, and then you go to jail and you are in quote unquote enjoying prison life at the behest of those who are working and struggling out here to make ends meet and you are benefiting from their taxpayers' dollars. No. So therefore, any measure, extreme or rehabilitative, if that's even possible, to ensure that we curb
Further,
crime, I support
and
it.
we're going into a whole sociological discussion here and further away from the
No, but
politics of the thing.
in
But I
the
want to ask
politics
you,
would be
I want to ask you, do you think the PNM is likely to regroup quickly as a strong opposition? Are they regrouping quickly as a strong opposition? Or is the party entering a period of, stagnation or some sort of reorganization internally? What's your assessment of the PNM after this defeat?
looking at them now. They have, I mean, prior to the election, you saw the cracks. The cracks existed. You saw the gaps. You saw the fractures. You saw where people disagreed. They can argue that they were under collective ministerial responsibility, and that extended to their party structure, with the exception of the former Minister of Labour, Jennifer Batiste Primus, who came out and was very vocal about how she felt about the operations of the PNM. Now that the PNM has lost cataclysmically for a second time, um, we are now seeing that there are several fractures, several gaps, several disagreements happening in the public's domain. Coded messages getting put out, being put out there. Former prime minister speaking when, dude, you are in retirement. You should leave the party to conduct its affairs without an input from what your thoughts and perspectives are, because they've rejected now his leadership because they also asked for him to resign before his time came up. So Penny Beckers is a stabilizer of what I assume would be a regrouping and rebuilding of the PNM. Can she control those that are under her in terms of who are competing for the other roles within the party? I'm not sure. And I am seeing that there's a lot of, uh, what's the word? There's a lot of uh, animosity that is existing among high ranking party members that I think it's going to take more than a year or more than just an internal election to uh, rebuild the way that I think the opposition leader envisions rebuilding. And can she do it? Um, Stabilize it possibly? Is the animosity going to dissipate? I don't think so. And can the PNM regroup to come back into a parliament and answer the hard questions from a government that is on a mission to fact find and ask the hard questions? So, for example, where's the billions of dollars that the Minister of Finance would have utilized? Where's the $2.3 billion that is used that is missing under the Auditor General's report? Where's the $1.25 billion that was used in loans um, from the former Prime Minister Stuart Young in the run up to the general election? Those hard questions, if they can't answer it, and the current administration discovers where it is, how it got there, and who put it there, then it's going to be very difficult to convince the people of Trinidad and Tobago. The same way Tobago specifically rejected the PNM in 2021 and doesn't look like they're going to go in the direction of the PNM at the THA level anytime soon, could very well be a turning point in Trinidad and Tobago politics here on after.
Dr. Mohammed, I want to take a break here. When we come back, I want to talk to you about international and regional relations and the tone that Prime Minister Prasad Bisesar has set in these first 30 days. I mean, we remember the epic comment of Trinidad and Tobago is not the ATM for the rest of the region, which sort of created some, people got up in their feelings over that comment when it was made. So I want to talk about her messaging on the regional scale as well as internationally. We talked about Mia Motley and how she's positioning herself as a global voice of CARICOM. We'll look at that as well. And also, what's happening with Guyana, Trinidad, and Tobago relations, as well as a little bit about the political space in Guyana itself. This is The Narrative. I'm your storyteller, Callistra Faria, back in the moment with Dr. Shane Mohammed. We're unpacking the situation in Trinidad with Kamla Prasad-Bissessar at the helm after her victory in recent general elections and the defeat of the People's National Movement in that country. More when we come back.